Yeah, it's really bad down here. Sorry, buddy.
Explosives, boys.
So if you're ever about to die, boys and girls, this is how you get away with Driller and turn a bad situation into a good one. That's absurd. That's amazing. God. Neurotoxin that guy's body, and we should be good. Duke, if you want to go res him, I think we're alright. Season 2 for Deep Rock Galactic just dropped a few days ago, and Judgment Day is upon us. The Terminators are invading. Rival Escalation is here, and 4 new secondary weapons have been added, 1 for each class in the game. Played a bunch of runs over the last 72 hours, figured out some elements that work super well and some that feel quite anemic, and want to showcase some strats that should help you survive the robot and Glyphid onslaught if you're thinking of picking up the game. Most of this gameplay is Hazard 5, some of it is Hazard 4 and should transfer over to lower difficulties as well. 4 new weapons here are the Colette Wave Cooker for the Driller, the Shard Diffractor for the Engineer, the Coil Gun for the Gunner, and the Nishanka Boltshark Crossbow for the Scout. And for me, the Colette Wave Cooker is unquestionably the best new secondary weapon introduced in Rival Escalation. Where every other new weapon seems to have moderate to severe ammo problems, the microwave gun has incredible synergy with both the Crisper Flamethrower and the Cryo Cannon, which are the 2 main primary weapons for Driller, and seems to have very little ammo problems at all. The basic combo here that doesn't require any special overclocks or modifiers is to bathe down an onrushing wave of bugs with napalm or coolant, whichever gun you're using, preferably with as much freezing power or heat power as possible, and then switch over to the microwave gun and sweep it over everything in front of you. Now, because this entire update is focused around invading armies of enemy robots, and robots are inherently weak to flame, I recommend building around the flamethrower if you're intent on countering the faction most likely to kill you and your squad. So if you have that rival presence modifier on, you probably want to go flamethrower, but I'm a cryo cannon lover at heart, and as you saw at the beginning of the video, it's downright stupid what it can do to a group of Glyphids. Like I said, I don't have any overclocks unlocked for it at all, so you can immediately jump in and try this out for yourself. My current build is ammo, cooling, temperature amplifier, wide lens, and exothermic reactor. But temp amplifier in the 3rd row and exothermic reactor in the final row are the 2 most important mods if you're running either Crisper or Cryo Gun. How it works is, if you microwave burning or frozen targets, they take additional shock damage from that rapid change in temperature, and they spread that to other enemies around them, which lets you trigger all kinds of carnage in an AoE while bursting through high HP enemies like Praetorians or Oppressors. Combine that with the fact that frozen enemies tend to shatter when exposed to even a tiny amount of incoming damage, this is one of the most effective wave clearing options I've come across in the entirety of Deep Rock Galactic. Now, the important thing with a wave cooker is that you tap fire it instead of just holding down the trigger, because you only need a microsecond burst to kill frozen enemies, and the gun overheats very quickly. So if you spend time cooling your weapon down, then everything you just froze will break out of the ice, and you'll lose out on your ability to instantly shatter the horde. So don't just hold down the trigger, fire it in bursts as you rapidly move from one target to the next, and they'll all start shattering, and you'll clear out dozens of enemies in very short order. It's also important for me to note that it has 2 fire modes, a wide lens for AoE, and a focus lens for single target. With the wide lens, of course, being better for wave clearing directly in front of you, but overheating the weapon quicker, and the focus lens letting you engage single targets more efficiently at longer ranges. Contrary to what you might think, this thing does not lack for range. It can very easily explode splitters or web slingers attacking you from the walls or ceiling a good distance away. It has good single target DPS against high threat enemies, amazing wave clear, it's very ammo efficient, especially in comparison to the other weapons in this update, so I think it will quite comfortably become meta for the driller over the Subata and plasma pistols. But my favorite weapon in Rival Escalation is the Shard Diffractor for the Engineer. It's a laser beam that just straight up melts stuff. I mean, what isn't to love? Now, Engineer is my favorite class, and it's kind of a shame that the Shard Diffractor takes a secondary slot, because I already love the Grenade Launcher and Plasma Cutter, and I find his primary weapons a little bit boring, so I would have preferred more variety on that front. But there are a bunch of ways to build this weapon, and everything I've seen so far tells me that most will be effective. You can build it to maximize heat and burn through robots super fast, or you can focus more on the armor piercing and weak spot damage to quickly shred through Glyphid Guards, Praetorians, and Mactera Brundles. But no matter how you choose to approach it, certain elements of this gun will almost always remain true. It will be ammo starved like crazy, and it will have super high single target DPS. From what I've heard on the experimental build, it was quite underwhelming and barely did any damage there, so Ghost Ship must have cranked up some value on the slider, because that is not even remotely true anymore. Even on Hazard 5, a half-second burst will kill just about any basic enemy in the game, and sustained focus fire will absolutely melt through Praetorians and Oppressors, even from the front if you build for armor breaking. Of course, that style of play will not be ammo efficient, but those enemies are designed to be difficult to kill from the front, so just the fact that you can be cornered by an Oppressor, turn the heat up, and evaporate it in seconds is a very useful trait to fall back on, should it be required. My current build is all about increasing that single target DPS against bosses and armor as much as possible. It is not optimized, I haven't done any fancy math calculations, I'm just using what feels good and what looks sick. And in row 1, there's a good argument to be made for more ammo, but I like damage, so I tend to stick with that. Then it's weak spot in row 2, faster charging in row 3, armor breaking in row 4, and biomass converter in row 5, which lets you extend your beam duration every time you get a kill. Again, I would recommend skipping the AP and building more towards heat on any rival presence missions where robots are likely to attack you, particularly because the new Nemesis enemy type basically insta-dies when he's put on fire, but is pretty hard to kill with anything else. You can quite literally one-shot the Nemesis with the Coil Gun secondary for Gunner if you have the Hellfire overclock. Basically, it just sits in the flame and then melts away in only a handful of seconds. Maybe not as important to know now, because they just fixed the bug where it would keep respawning over and over again over the course of a mission, but it's still potentially a run-ending enemy if you get caught out, so having at least one player on your team build to hard counter it is not a bad idea. Personally, while I think the microwave gun is the best, most efficient weapon in this update, I think the Shard Diffractor is the most fun, and visually it's by far the coolest. It can wreck hordes, it can wreck important enemies, its only downside is its exorbitant ammo consumption. I don't think it's better than the grenade launcher or the plasma cutter in its current form, although it certainly performs a slightly different role, but I still think it has a very nice role to play in Deep Rock Galactic, and I really enjoy using it. As for the other two weapons in this update, I find the Coil Gun and Crossbow to be somewhat mediocre, despite trying all kinds of different builds around electricity and synergies with their primary weapons. I've tried all kinds of builds, and they're not terrible weapons in certain circumstances, but I think they are a little bit underwhelming in quite a few areas. You can make them work, but they're just not great. With that said, if you weren't following the marketing cycle for these guns, or haven't dived into their skill trees too much yet, the Coil Gun can do some really cool stuff. It can entirely shoot through cave walls, so if your ally is grabbed by a Cave Leech or Mactera, and you can see the outline of that teammate, you can save their life with a well-placed shot through multiple walls and multiple enemies, which is awesome. And it functions best as a wave clear machine when you can get lots of enemies lined up in a row. So force them down a tunnel, preferably one that your driller drilled for you, and you can kill tons of enemies with a single shot. As for the Nishanka Boltshark, if you pick Chem Bolts in row 1, tag an enemy and then kill it in the middle of an onrushing horde, you'll be greeted by an explosion that rivals the power of a grenade launcher, giving a scout some wave clear potential that he otherwise wouldn't have access to. It requires a decent amount of setup. It might even require you to throw a pheromone grenade to get them all bunched up, and it hardly turns the crossbow into a monster or anything, but it can be quite satisfying to see a horde of enemies disappear after a well-placed shot. I'm having a ton of fun with the new update on Deep Galactic. It's a game that I can highly recommend, and if you'd like to see any more DRG, please do let me know in the comment section below. Please leave your build ideas and thoughts on the new weapons down there as well, and I'll see you all in the next video. Andy Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.